It is the ACC championship game. Winner take all. Clemson at #1 in the country, 11-1. Miami at #7 at 10-1. What else could you ask for? We bring in Cam Underwood from State of the U, who breaks down Miami football for us on a regular basis and provides some tremendous analysis. And Cam, we are counting on you for this one. So what is the feeling, injuries aside, that we'll get to in just a second, all of that aside, but Miami being in the league for a number of years, finally getting to the ACC championship game? Yes, you knew it was coming. It was locked up a couple weeks ago, but finally the game is here, and a lot riding on the line for the crown of the ACC and also to get to a college football playoff berth facing the #1 team in the country.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, and, I feel good. Feel strong, I'm ready and everything. I've been waiting for this moment for a long, long time. Like we've been in the conference for, 13 years now, 14 years, and whatever number of years, but we've never been to the ACC championship game before. So this is a good time for Miami Hurricanes football, especially, in the wake of what's going on in Gainesville and potentially Tallahassee with, their coaching situations and the way that their seasons went and everything. And this has just been a perfect storm, no pun intended, for the Hurricanes, just to really have a resurgent season this year. So, obviously disappointed with the outcome on last week, Friday, after Thanksgiving. Really just played a poor game all the way throughout and lost our first game of the year, which is the first game that we've lost in almost 13 months. But yeah, overall, really a strong season, and feel really good about this team. Feel very happy for this team as well, because all of the seniors who came here and the juniors as well, they've seen some tough times. And it was not always the Miami of old, the U of, Sean Taylor, Ed Reed, Vince Wilfork, and all those guys whose names you know. The U, when the seniors and juniors committed and came to Miami, was not that same caliber of program. So seeing them go through some really tough times and a lot of losses, even to some bad teams that Miami should have never lost to, like a Cincinnati on the road, barely snatching victory from the jaws of defeat, even though that victory should have been a blowout against Nebraska a couple of years ago, things like that. But seeing that group really be the leaders of this team that has come to the forefront of college football again for a variety of reasons, and at 10-1 and ranked 7th, and going up against the #1 team in America this weekend, has a chance to catapult themselves into a college football playoff in 2017-18. It's really great. So I'm very excited about it. I'm very happy for the players. Obviously, don't like all of the injuries that we've been sustaining or that the players have been sustaining that we're going to talk about. But overall, I don't see how you can have any other view of this season than an overwhelming positive for the Miami Hurricanes. And that's where I am. And I'm really excited to be heading up to Charlotte myself for the ACC championship game this Saturday to see my Hurricanes take on the Clemson Tigers.
So, Cam, encapsulating what you just did in regards to your Miami fandom going back to the glory days, but looking more recently at some marginal times and some marginalized times because of poor coaching and other circumstances surrounding the program. Big fans, rabid fans can typically, you can say a score and it brings to mind a game, and a game that's beyond the game, a game that represents something. So I'm going to throw 2 scores at you, and you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about because we mentioned one before we started to record, but I'll throw another one at you. 48-0, Virginia. Obviously, you know what that means. And 58-0 to this Clemson team just 2 years ago. And for a program that was not achieving at the expectations of Miami football at championship caliber, the team was still good throughout the 2005 to 13 or 14 or 15 range. But that 58-0 against Clemson kind of marked, okay, wow, something needs to be done right away. Al Golden is not the guy. We didn't think it before this. Now we know it, and something needs to happen in a hurry. And for this program to have rebounded this quickly, some less than 2 years after what we saw there in Miami against the Clemson Tigers, is pretty astounding.
Yeah, it is. And both of those games, are very fresh in the forefront of my brain because I was at both of those games for the duration. The 48-0 to Virginia was the last game, the Orange Bowl, and I sat in the upper deck of the West End Zone with my buddy, and I kept screaming at him that we needed to leave and everything, and he just looked at me and said, "I drove. You're not leaving." Because I live in Broward, like up in Fort Lauderdale area, not down in the downtown Miami area, which is where the Orange Bowl once was. So, yeah, I was kind of stuck a ways away from home. And this is like before Uber and whatnot, so there was really no good option. So I sat there and watched every single play of that terrible, terrible game. And then 58-0 to Clemson, I was in the press box for that one. And literally in the second half, I sat in the press box and counted people in the sections along the sideline because, I looked up every 3 plays and Clemson scored again. But literally, there were so few people that I counted like 11 people in that section, 7 people in that section, because everybody was fed up, and rightfully so. And it was just 100%. It was the worst loss in the history of Miami Hurricanes football. Like statistically, you can look it up. And it was the thing that pushed Al Golden out of the door. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. And I wrote that whole entire 2015 season, and that was the game when Miami basically almost snatched defeat from the hands of victory against Nebraska and barely came back to win that game that they should have won by 40 or 50 in overtime. And I wrote that whole year, and people were very, very upset with me about it. And I even came on here and said, look, the athletic director, Blake James, said he's not going to fire Al Golden. He says he's going to evaluate the coaching staff at the end of the year. And I didn't believe that anything was going to push him away from that stance. And then I saw 58-0, and oh my goodness, like that was untenable. There was no coming back from that. I would have fired Al Golden that night. And that was a very quick and curt media availability, post-game press conference type thing. I think Al Golden answered like 2 or 3 questions and then walked off really quickly, and everybody in the room just kind of was there flabbergasted, like, bro, like, wait, no, we got more questions. Like, you can't just leave after that game and not answer about that. But, I say all that to say that, that was rock bottom for Miami, honestly and truly. And, getting Al Golden out, even though you might not have wanted it to be in such a way as he was embarrassed like that, but it was an absolute necessity. And Miami rebounded really quickly and got Mark Richt in here and has really turned this program around. 8-4, 9-4 last year, including that big bowl win against a overmatched West Virginia team who talked all that crap and got smacked in the mouth. And then, you run through 10-0 into the regular season finale this year, hadn't lost, like I said, in 13 months. You lose to Pittsburgh, but you're still in prime position to make the college football playoff a full year in advance, because most people were looking at the 2018 season as when Miami would have the depth and talent to really get back to where they want to be, competing for championships, both conference and national. But they're at the doorstep of crossing that vanguard now. So, yeah, I know what both of those numbers were that you said, 48-0 and 58-0. But honestly, 48-0, that was Randy Shannon and or Larry Coker or somebody long time ago. But 58-0 was only 2 years ago. And that was something that really, when it hit rock bottom, everybody had to evaluate what was going on. Players, the coaches, the administration, and say, if we want things to change, then we really need to make a big change. And they did that. Obviously, they've stepped up with getting the coaching staff, one of the best coaching staffs in America. They've stepped up their financial obligation or interaction with those coaches, where they're paying them what they would be getting paid at bigger state schools with maybe even a little bit more of a budget. But again, if you want good people, you're going to have to compensate them. That's just the way that it works in a professional world. And Miami's doing that. So they're in a great place. We're continuing to raise the bar, get more talent on this team, still rebuild depth. But yeah, I was there through the dark days, but I'm here for the sunshine and the happiness now. So hopefully we have more of that on Saturday.
Miami Clemson for the ACC Championship 2017 coming up Saturday night on ABC prime time. The Canes, number 7 in the country after falling to Pitt, but still with everything to play for. So I don't know that game really mattered that much in the entirety of the situation. Clemson, of course, is number 1 in the country and about a touchdown favorite or a little bit more at this point, and some of that being taken into consideration by Vegas and others. has to do with the injury situation. So unfortunately, it was discovered today after practice that Amon Richards, meniscus tear in his left knee, will miss the game and the rest of the season. Christopher Herndon lost to a knee injury as well against the Pitt Panthers. Can you address those situations and how Miami's going to compensate? Who's going to be more in the game plan because of those two players going down?
Yeah, those are big losses. And you put that with Mark Walton, who was previously injured with a broken leg at Florida State. And that's your number one, your starting running back, your best wide receiver, one of the top 5 or 10 wide receivers in America, and one of the best, if not the best, tight ends in America, all gone off this team. So that's a lot to deal with. Miami is still rebuilding the depth of the program, but the top end talent I'd put up against anybody in America. And when you lose guys of that caliber, of a Walton, a Richards, and a Herndon, and Richards and Herndon being just within this last week, that's a tough pill to swallow. So Herndon was out because he hurt his knee in the third quarter of the Pitt game. So you figured coming into this week of practice, you're going to go more with maybe 4 wide, 5 wide sets to get away from running as much tight end, because Michael Irvin II is the backup tight end who's now going to start. But the gap between the starter and the backup was quite large. And then you have Scott Patchen, who was a defensive end. He came over, played a little tight end. And then Brian Palendi, who's in from Texas, but he's a freshman and he's a little raw. Those are the 3 guys at tight end now. So you figure, okay, we're going to go more 4 wide, more 5 wide to, not have to really lean on those guys because they're not ready for prime time yet. And that's okay, because we were not expecting them to be ready to be starting level Christopher Herndon caliber players. But now, where you could have previously had a Richards, Berrios, Jeff Thomas, Lawrence Cager, Travis Homer, skill guy position set around Malik Rozier, now you're taking Amon Richards out of that equation. And yes, he's been injured the entire season, only played 8 games, only had 23 catches for 400-something yards and 3 touchdowns. But losing him, now that's one of the guys that you were using to replace Herndon a little bit and mitigate that loss. So now you're not only losing one guy and then replacing him, you're losing the guy you're trying to replace the other guy kind of with. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be just, you're going to lean on all these other skill position guys. So at wide receiver, you got a group of Braxton Berrios, Jeff Thomas, Mike Harley, Dayall Harris, Lawrence Cager. Those 5 guys are going to all play big snaps in rotation. Daryl Langham, I don't think I mentioned him. He's going to be in there as well. So they're going to be the guys who are going to be out there as receivers. At tight end, if we're going with tight ends, it's going to be Michael Irvin first, then probably Scott Patchen second, and maybe Brian Palendi third. I got to look back at the participation report to see if Palendi has played this year or if we would be burning his red shirt, but I'm pretty sure he's already played. So if he were to play more in this game, in the bowl game, it wouldn't, cost anything eligibility-wise. But, yeah, that's really going to be it. DJ Dallas is a multi-talented athlete. He's played wildcat, quarterback, running back, and receiver. He's another guy who's going to be out there. And then Travis Homer, the running back, obviously, is going to be out there as well. Maybe a Trayon Gray, even though he's had very low snaps this year. I don't really think that he's going to be that big of a contributor in this game. But, yeah, it's really going to be all hands on deck in a kind of skill position group by committee. It's not going to be – there's no one guy who can replace Christopher Herndon, and there's no one guy who can replace Amon Richards, let alone one guy or 2 guys who can replace them both. It's going to take everybody in together. So it's really just going to be a group effort. So everybody has to step up. And, this is Miami. And regardless of the depth of the program or what people think, the standard here has always been next man up. So, we're just going to look at who the next guys up are and just give them the opportunities. And hopefully they're able to make plays and keep us in a competitive game where we have a chance to win.
Cam Underwood, State of the U, breaking down Miami football as the Canes prepare for the ACC championship game against number 1 Clemson. So was the Pitt game a complete aberration? Do you completely dismiss it, or did you see some things that caused more concern than what you had thought of this team prior to that game?
That was just a Murphy's Law game for me. Everything that could have went wrong did. Malik Rozier was terrible the entire day. And I know that his stats looked halfway decent because he had 2 touchdowns and no interceptions and a couple of yards, late in the game and everything. But I mean, he was atrocious. Like the reason that we lost, or one of the main reasons, and I put it on Malik Rozier as the quarterback, is he missed wide open throws. I mean, you got guys running, I like to call it butt naked wide open down the field. And Pittsburgh intentionally made it like that. They said, if you can hit these throws, then you're going to win. And that's what Brad Kaya did last year when we blew them out by like 3 or 4 touchdowns the week before they beat Clemson last year, Pittsburgh, that is. And Malik Rozier just was not able to hit anybody. Amon Richards was open for a touchdown or 2. Jeff Thomas was open. Braxton Berrios, a couple other ones. Even he was throwing ground balls on stop routes, on like quick slants. On he couldn't hit a bubble screen. I mean, it was just atrocious, and that let Pittsburgh completely sell out against the run and say, you're going to have to throw to beat us. And if you hit a couple throws, now the run game opens, because that's the way that people want to defend our offense. And they weren't able to make that happen. Punted the ball back to Pittsburgh a whole bunch of times, had a couple bad punts in there too, even had a 13-yard punt, which that's not going to be helpful for anybody. And Pittsburgh, in starting a true freshman quarterback, which, I had to hear ad nauseum, they held the ball for 36 and a half minutes of game time. So offense is coming off the field really quickly with all these incompletions, so you're not running clock. And then you leave the defense out there, the defense that is one of the top defenses in America and has done a great job and gotten all the turnovers and turnover chain, yeah, all that kind of stuff. But if they're out there for 37 minutes a game, that's not going to be helpful. Now, you could talk about, okay, maybe the defense could have made a couple plays and gotten off on 3rd down, and everybody got fooled on that one 4th down bootleg naked where the quarterback ran for the final touchdown for Pittsburgh and everything. Got hurt for a bit and came back in. Malik Rozier was so bad, he got benched for a series when it's a 10-point game, and all you need is one score to make it like a really competitive game. And then Evan Shirreffs goes batted ball, sack, punt in 4 plays. And, that anybody who thought that, Evan Shirreffs was going to be a player at quarterback or even in the conversation previously, and I'm one of those people because I said that, we were proven to be 100% false in that instance, because that was just, no, absolutely not. But as I've been talking, you just see all of the things that went wrong. It was just everything. That was a Murphy's Law kind of game. So I don't think that that's really going to be emblematic of Miami's performance. I think that was a game that was really a wake-up call for everybody. I don't know if most of you all did watch the game, but when Malik Rozier was coming off the field and he got benched, and he kind of had that Jay Cutler, that look on his face, that kind of whatever, that look. And he spoke about it after the game and just said, maybe I wasn't prepared and I wasn't ready and I was lackadaisical in the moment. How you're lackadaisical at 10-0, going for 11-0 for a chance to play for a national championship, and going into that game number 2 with Auburn or Alabama losing to Auburn, this could be your number 1 Miami Hurricanes this week. Like, that was what was at stake. And you're not motivated. You're not in the moment. You don't have any joie de vivre. You don't have any buy-in to that. Like, what else do you need? And I just think that was just a failure of epic proportions for everybody. I think it was Murphy's Law. Everything went wrong in that game. So I'm really going to throw that one out. I had it on my DVR, and I deleted it. I didn't even watch it back. So, this team has to be refocused now. And obviously, they're going to hear the talk of everybody talking about, 58-0, 58-0. And a lot of the guys on this team were on this team for that. Your juniors and seniors were freshmen and sophomores then. So Braxton Berrios was a starting player in that game against Clemson for 58-0. Like, Malik Rozier came in for Brad Kaya when he got concussion that week. So, yeah, I'm leaving last week in last week. I mean, obviously the past is in the past, but that's one where I just erase, delete, burn the tape, and you go forward with this week. And hopefully we get back to playing Miami Hurricanes football, because I've seen the Miami Hurricanes play that kind of football for 15 out of the last 16 weeks, where we won 15 in a row before losing. That's the Miami Hurricanes that I want to see. That team that whipped Virginia Tech's ass, the team that blew out Notre Dame, that kind of squad is who I want to see. So, yeah, burn that tape, leave the Pittsburgh game in the past, move forward with a new direction.
And you would think if the ACC championship and the college football playoff and the number one team standing in front of you is not enough incentive or to get your attention, that knocked it out of them. That knocked any assumption that they're that good, just whoever shows up we're going to beat. That game hopefully knocked it out of Miami, if at all that existed. I don't think that necessarily just because you lose and are upset is that you didn't show up. Yeah, of course they didn't show up. The more talented team didn't win, but that doesn't speak to effort necessarily from where I sit. I watched the game. Of course they didn't play anywhere close to their best. They played a D game against a team that was inferior by far, that played its A game, and some things broke Pitt's way as well. But that's aside. Fortunately, it's a winner-take-all situation with the ACC. So Clemson's a hot team. They just annihilated a decent South Carolina team. They seem to be running on all cylinders based on Clemson's ability, based on the way they play. And we'll start with your defense. Trying to face a running back tandem that's probably more talented and faster than any tandem that's been faced this year. Certainly better than Notre Dame and Virginia Tech when you talk Tavian Feaster and Travis Etienne. Your thoughts about starting with the defense facing this Clemson offense led by Kelly Bryant?
I mean, the defense has to bring it. That's plain and simple. Miami does have one of the best defensive lines in America, and they're going to have to show it. Clemson's left tackle, Mitch Hyatt, won the Jacobs Trophy for the ACC's best blocker, best offensive lineman. So obviously it's going to be a tall task for Chad Thomas or Joe Jackson or John Garvin or Trent Harris or whoever's lined up over him. And then everybody on the defense, but especially in that front seven, is going to have to really be gap sound because, Travis Etienne is fast. I mean, he's a true freshman, but boy, that kid can move. Like Tavian Feaster also is a 5-star running back. Like he's nothing to sneeze at, And then also Kelly Bryant in the QB run game, same as they did with Deshaun Watson. They're calling his number to run the ball. Like, QB power. Like we're pulling a guard and you're running right behind him as a quarterback. So, that trio, and I'm sure that, obviously they can do jet sweep with Deion Kane, and Ray McLeod has played. He was a high school running back, and then he plays receiver now, so he can obviously do that kind of thing as well. They have a lot of skill position players, but it's really just going to have to start up front, and obviously, Notre Dame came in with the vaunted running game, and Miami was able to bring it and shut them down. And obviously, I don't think that Notre Dame and Clemson run a very like an identical scheme, and I think that there are some things that are similar but also disparate, other things that are disparate, I should say. But either way, Miami's going to have to find a way to slow them down. And that's really just going to have to get buy-in from up front. You're going to have to play with that effort, be gap sound, and, make plays when you have an opportunity to make plays. You cannot be missing guys in the backfield when you have a chance for a tackle for loss, at which Miami is arguably the best team in America. You got to get those guys on the ground. You can't that's really what it's going to come down to. The front seven is going to have to play one of their best games. It's going to have to be a Notre Dame-style game. And, I'm interested to see if they can do that. I know we have the talent to do it. And hopefully, again, we have the motivation after last week to really prove ourselves to be that kind of a team. But, there's going to be a clash of titans right there with their run game versus Miami's run defense.
And, Cam, I know you're aware of this kid, Hunter Renfrow, and I hate to stereotype him as, he's the little guy that could, the walk-on type, the little slot receiver. Boy, isn't he cute. But, man, that guy can ball it up. And in addition to what he does out of the slot, I'm watching the game against South Carolina last weekend, and he just makes one of those, like, coach's kid, knows what he's doing kind of plays where they're punting to him, South Carolina is, and he completely dupes the coverage. He plays as though he's going for the football. The football's behind him, and it's on the other side of the field. He's acting on the other side of the field like he's fielding the punt. Therefore, the South Carolina coverage is drawn to him. Therefore, they're not stopping the kick that was almost perfectly placed inside the 5, and it's going into the end zone. And he's just making plays like that. He caught a ball on the side in the slot and juked out like 5 guys. He actually had a face mask against him, and that didn't bring him down, and he runs for a touchdown. And he caught the game-winning touchdown in the national championship game last year and 2 against Alabama the year before. So he's just another one of the threats with 50 catches and 3 touchdowns as well. All right, Cam Underwood, State of the U, joining us to break down Miami football as they prepare for the Clemson Tigers in the ACC championship game. So, Cam, we can flip it to the other side. You have talked quite a bit about the offense in trying to replace Amon Richards and Christopher Herndon. Any other thoughts regarding what needs to be done and a different Malik Rozier showing up? Of course, that has to be the biggest key of all. But I would think the second one would be offensive line versus maybe the best defensive front in America.
Yeah, and offensive line has to really play well. And that's going to give, hopefully, Miami the ability to find running lanes and also have Malik Rozier have the time to find receivers. And, I know that Clemson's defensive line is very, very good. I'm not taking anything away from them. They have a lot of very talented players. So does Miami. So for Miami's offensive line, they're going up against a top-tier defensive line every day in practice as well. So seeing the caliber of Clemson defensive line is not a super leap in talent, whereas they've not seen anybody of that caliber or gone against them at all this season. So Miami, the offensive line really is going to have to play well. And Malik Rozier cannot have the same kind of game that he had at Pittsburgh. That's just the end of the story, like period, point blank. Like he has to play better. And everybody just has to make plays. I'm interested to see also what kind of things schematically Mark Richt is going to try to tweak or change, give new wrinkles this week, because Miami's run a bunch of different things. You've seen RPOs, you've seen toss plays, you've seen a couple jet sweeps recently, you've seen a couple rollouts, you've seen some wildcat. You've seen a very – it's not been super diverse in number. Like, we're not running all these things equally. Like, you're going to have the base offense a lot. But Miami's shown a bunch of different things this year. And I'm interested to see what else is going to be there. Because I think there's going to be maybe a trick play or two. Because why not? At this point, Miami's playing with house money. We're finally in the conference championship game for the first time. You lose and you go to the Orange Bowl as the highest-ranked non-college football playoff team from the ACC. You win, and you're probably going to the Final Four of the college football playoff with an opportunity to play, if you win that semifinal, to play in the finals for a national championship. So I would think that Mark Richt, if he's been drawing something up, if he's been holding something back, I think we're going to see something different this week than we've seen from them. But that only matters if the offensive line is able to protect on whatever that play is, whether it's zone blocking, man blocking. They have to give time for that to develop, whatever it is. So I'm really interested to see that. And then, again, just who are the players that are going to step up in the pass game to really make up for the losses of Christopher Herndon and Amon Richards, because those are two of the best players at their positions in America, and losing them before this game against a very talented Clemson team really makes it difficult for Miami, and we'll see who can step up.
Cam Underwood, State of the U. You got to join him there for the very best in Miami football coverage as the Canes prepare for Clemson. Subscribe to my YouTube channel as well for the very best in college football coverage coast to coast. So, Cam, I know you want to believe that everybody's watching Miami each and every week, but there are multiple games on multiple networks all the time. On this particular Saturday night, you got Clemson, Miami. You've got Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game against Wisconsin. You basically have the nation split to some degree, 50-50, 55-45, whatever it is. So tons of eyeballs on this football team that haven't been on this team previously. So for somebody watching Miami for the first time, the second time, whatever, this year, is there anybody on that field that you've watched this year? And, of course, the story's been ultra positive this year. So it's been guys achieving to their standard, or maybe overachieving a little bit, or stepping up in a role that they didn't have last season. But is there anybody out there, either side of the football, that you think, I think they're a wild card, I think this guy could shine, whether a star or maybe not an impact player?
Yeah, I think you have to start with Jaquan Johnson at safety. Leading tackler on the team, 4 interceptions, 2 fumbles recovered, a sack, a couple tackles for loss, just all over the place. 3 weeks in a row was the ACC Defensive Back of the Week, and got absolutely robbed for first team All ACC by people who only look at recruiting rankings and preseason lists who voted Derwin James over him for first team All ACC. And I mean, excuse my language, but that's straight bullshit.
That's crazy.
It's unacceptable. And Jaquan Johnson is one of the best players in America. He could and be first team All American, but was not voted first team All ACC. That is a kid who was nicknamed the franchise coming out of high school. One of very few kids ever to be 4-time first team All County in Miami-Dade County football, which, if you don't know, is rarefied air for anybody to ever be in. So, yeah, he's a great player. He's somebody who's obviously going to have a big impact in the game. In the secondary, joining him, Michael Jackson has been a revelation this year. I think he has 5 or 6 interceptions, very good in run support as well. So that's another guy who, has just been making plays. And I mean, his name is Michael Jackson. So obviously you're going to get the bad or beat it or whatever, music drop over the top if he makes a play. So, that's cool. And then, I already talked about everybody on offense. Travis Homer at running back and Jeff Thomas, the freshman wide receiver, and Braxton Berrios, those kind of guys. And then just pretty much anybody on the defensive line. Miami has 10 guys. Well, Demetrius Jackson got injured. He tore up a knee, so he's out for the year. So Miami has about 9 guys up front who all should be NFL players eventually, not necessarily next year, but throughout the course of their career. So there's depth and talent there. So, I've given you quite a couple guys to look at to be maybe some names to know if you have not been familiar watching Miami. And I understand that everybody has not watched every week, but that Notre Dame game, people watched that. That had huge ratings. The game day that day before the Notre Dame game was the highest rated game day show of the year. And so there were people who were looking into that as they were doing Miami Hurricanes profiles. And P.S., by the way, game day is going back to go to another Miami Hurricanes game because they're going to be at Romare Bearden Park in Charlotte before the ACC championship game this weekend. So that's another time for people to watch. But yeah, this is the U, and I'm not going to say that the U is back in the same kind of way, but the U is back in national consciousness for, some kind of consequence. So, get reacquainted with the University of Miami and throw up that U and look at that turnover chain and everything. So it's going to be a great time on Saturday night, and I hope that you're there to witness greatness.
My 2 footnotes on Miami football, especially on the defensive side, is I just went down the schedule. I watched basically 8 games this year, pretty much start to finish, close to it. Okay, Jaquan Johnson has 81 tackles on this team that includes Shaq Quarterman, Michael Pinckney, leads the team in tackles with 81 total stops, 3 tackles for loss, and the 4 interceptions. And the one that comes to mind is, of course, the game changer against Virginia. And if you saw that play from the end zone view, it took a player of great anticipation, great readiness and awareness of the play and the route, but also the speed and the burst to get there in time. And that combination allowed him to make that play that very few players would make, to take that back for 6 and to tie that game and really swing the momentum and send the Canes on to 30 straight points in the win. Also, RJ McIntosh, I made the comment the other day, there were some back and forth on Twitter that when I'm watching these games, this guy is just wreaking havoc in the backfield, just pushing offensive linemen, disrupting plays. You can't count that with tackles, even tackles for loss, where he has 11.5. And if you know that position, that's a ton for that inside position. But in addition to that, even the ones that he doesn't get credit for, he is disrupting plays all over the place. And I want to see voting for the ACC Defensive Player of the Year, because I think both of those guys should be in the running for that. Unfortunately, the first team and second team selections give us indication as to what people are thinking in terms of that vote.
Yeah, no, I mean, I forgot to mention RJ McIntosh, who is really, really good, and you should know his name, defensive tackle, along with Kendrick Norton, the other defensive tackle. And they have weird numbers for defensive linemen. RJ McIntosh wears number 80, Kendrick Norton wears number 7. So that's a weird combination up front, but weird numbers, but very, very good players. And yeah, RJ McIntosh being a very disruptive player is true, but he did not earn a single vote for ACC Defensive Player of the Year, which is kind of crazy to me. But these things happen. But yeah, there's a lot of talent on this team. Like I said, And I know through the course of this talk today, we've gone through a lot of the starters and very few of the backups, because only at defensive line are you really going to find quality depth behind the starters. Maybe a little bit in the secondary, which has stepped up this year. But, yeah, there's a lot of talent all over this field. And, hopefully they play to their capability on Saturday and give Miami a really, really big victory in a probably – and I said – and somebody disagreed with me that the Pittsburgh game was the biggest game that Miami had played in about 13 years. And it was, because we were number 2 in the country and potentially moving up to number 1 with a win, and lost that one. But, that was the biggest game that Miami had played this season or in the last few years then. And now you spin it forward, and this week takes over that mantle. So hopefully all of those guys, maybe even a couple whose names we have not said today, step up and make some plays.
All right, he is Cam Underwood. You can join him on State of the U with the rest of the staff in covering Miami football at its very best. Clemson, Miami, we look forward to it on Saturday night. All right, Cam, safe travels, and we appreciate the breakdown as always.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me, and go Canes.